A couple years ago, one of my closest friends relocated cross-country with his long-term girlfriend to work a job he couldn't refuse. The only issue he had was that he didn't want to fly his dogs out with him when they made the move. They'd be staying in a hotel for the first month. He was also a bit reticent to fly them out due to health concerns for both pets. By the time he located a home to rent, he was missing his furry buddies, and made the request of his sister, another close friend, and myself to drive them to him in LA. Now, we're Chicago folks, so the trip would be quite a long one. However, with the three of us to foot the near 30-hour drive, it would be a piece of cake. We left early and we drove long hours. Along the way, it was decided between my friend and I that we'd foot the majority of the drive ourselves, and if we needed to, we'd let our friend's sister do some driving. We were on a bit of a time crunch due to a snafu with the rental agreement, so we didn't have the luxury to stop very often, past an 8-hour stay at a Denver La Quinta Inn. As for the journey itself, it was relatively smooth, barring getting pulled over right before entering Utah for driving 2 miles in the left lane of an empty highway. From that point on, we made it through Utah, Arizona, and Nevada without much trouble, until we entered California in need of some gas. I'd been driving for the majority of the first day, and tagged my buddy in after being pulled over. I remained in the shotgun seat as navigator, searching through the GPS for a fuel stop. We kept our eyes peeled for road signs, and found we'd discovered a sign pointing to Yermo Ghost Town, or something along those lines, which had a mobile station. It was convenient too, as it was located almost directly off of the interstate. We rolled in on little more than fumes when we approached the pumps. Normally we let the dogs out at every rest stop, but having stopped not long before then, and with both dogs sleeping snugly in the back, I decided to pump gas without anyone else leaving the vehicle. My buddy pulled us up on the opposite side of a beat-up green sedan with a short, plump gentleman who just turned in to approach the shop. I noticed a few other hoopties at the pumps, all unoccupied. There were a couple of other cars parked up near the station. Most likely they belonged to the employees, so nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Until I swiped my credit card. The pump rejected my first swipe attempt, which I chalked up to a misread. I swipe it again and the pump reads out, "Please see the attendant." I was a bit annoyed, but we really needed the gas. I tapped on the window and told my buddy what I was doing, and asked if anyone might need anything. After taking their orders for Gatorade and Marlboro Reds, I walked up to the store and made a mental note of how strange this gas station was. Kind of quiet, especially for one right off the interstate, but that was no matter. As I walked in though, there was more weirdness. First thing I noticed is that there are some boxes of chips just left on the floor, like someone was stocking the shelves and just quit. As I veer to my right, I noticed that immediately there's no one milling about in this place. With the 6 cars beside my own out there, I felt like I would see someone. Things got even weirder when I realized that there was no one behind the counter. No customers or workers. And then it dawned on me. What had happened to the gentleman that was at the pump adjacent to mine? Surely they couldn't all be in the bathroom. This is where I began to feel this gnawing sensation in my stomach. Something just wasn't right. I've always been a person who felt like I could trust my instincts, and those instincts were screaming at me to just get the hell out. I wanted to run, but I held back. I would look suspicious booking it out of a gas station that was empty, so I decided to just play it cool. Don't let your body language let on how badly you're freaking out in your head. I was probably inside of this gas station for only a couple of minutes when I left, but I stopped just before exiting to listen for something. Anything. A flushing toilet would have been a good sound, but there was nothing. As I exit the shop and see my car, I begin to feel dread. It's like that moment in a movie where the hero is about to make it to the end of their trial, but the celebratory fanfare disappears, and in that silence, something comes and strikes them down. I'm about 25 yards from the car, when I see this gentleman come out from around the side of the shop opposite me. It's not the same man as I saw while pumping gas. He was larger and he had a peculiar look on his face. The best way I could describe it was like Nick Cage's smile from Face Off before the titular act had occurred. I continued walking towards my car, but when I turned to look back at him, he was now walking towards me with a purpose. At this point, I noped my way back to the car with increased urgency in my step. And of course, my friend had the door to the car locked like a complete douche clown. There's also the 95-pound golden retriever sitting in my seat. Apparently, my travel companions didn't notice how freaked out I was, or the gentleman walking in my direction. I punched the window and told him to unlock the fucking door, to which he only half rolls down the window to tell me that the dog was in my seat, and they were afraid she'd jump out when I opened the door. I reach my hand in and push the dog towards the back seat as hard as I can, while my friend is just now realizing how freaked out I am. He started the car and we drove back quickly. I take one last look back to see that the man has stopped about a pump away from where we were, still with that same look on his face. We found another gas station further down the road, this time with a ton of people inside and out. After thoroughly creeping out my friends with the story as I pumped gas, we made our way back to the interstate, which meant passing that gas station again. It had been about 15 minutes since we pulled out initially, and we go silent as we notice that the very same cars are still sitting in the same spots where they had left them. After thoroughly freaking out for a few miles, I received a phone call from my credit card company about a $100 charge at the mobile station. The lady on the phone was really helpful in fixing the situation for me, and was as entirely creeped out by it as we were. In the end, we made it to LA and had a great vacation, but it still bothers me as to what the hell was going on with this little gas station off the highway, and what the hell was that smiling man's story. About 3 weeks ago, my mom told my brother and I this story. It straight up gave me a yucky feeling. Sally is a lifelong family friend. She would frequently visit her friends and family in Oklahoma. We live in a small town in southern Ontario, Canada. Sally would drive, and she would drive straight 20 hours at least overnight to get from our town to another small town. She did this simply to save money, and obviously wanted to arrive as soon as she could. Now that you've got the little prelude, here's the actual story. About 30 years ago, she decided to head south on a visit. No big deal, she's done this a few times. So she packs up and heads out. At some point, after driving about 14 or 15 hours, she started to get pretty tired. Being as it was probably the 80s, it was a little safer, so she decided that she would stop at a rest stop. It was more of a traveler stop, my mom said, to sleep for a little bit and resume her drive first thing in the AM. She parks in a very well-lit and busy rest stop. She parks right by the lights, and felt at ease because there was an abundance of travelers stopping and going. At this point, she gets out for a bathroom break, comes back, and settles in her car. About then, an RV pulls up beside her, and an elderly couple gets out. The man asks her about coming from Canada. They strike up a little conversation. Nothing really odd. The couple talk to Sally for a little bit. They tell her that they're driving from the south, going north, and just needed to have a sleep for the night. They wanted to talk because they were unsure if a rest stop was okay to stop at, but seeing Sally there, they were at ease. They say a good night to each other and good trip, and the couple goes back to their RV. Sally locked her doors up and went to sleep. 2 or 3 hours later, she woke up with a really unsettling feeling. She looks around but sees nothing. A few people are going in the stop. The parking lights are all on. She assumes she's just feeling bad because she's tired, and a car isn't the best place to sleep in. About 10 minutes after she said that, though, this feeling actually got worse, and it became a jarring, uneasy, and queasy feeling. She sat back and tried to shrug it off, but this didn't work, and apparently every red alarm she had and instinct were telling her that she needed to go. She panics and starts her car and peels off. She doesn't care where. She just knew that she had to get away from there. So about 20 miles down the road, she finds a motel and a gas station/restaurant stop. She decides to see if she could get a room for what little money she has. At this point, she converses with the person in charge. He cuts her a deal as he doesn't want a young woman driving alone at night. She gets a key and pops into her hotel room and sleeps for the night. No issues, all in peace. At around 9 a.m. she woke up, showered and changed clothes, and decided to relax for a few. She turns on the TV, and what was on it actually gives me chills. There was a breaking story about an elderly couple killed in the middle of the night. The news showed the RV that Sally was parked next to, exact spot, and exact same rest stop. And she sees the fast food drink cup she had dropped on accident that had rolled under her car. Sometime during the night, a man had broken into their RV, killed them, and then left, presumably right before Sally had left herself. The man was never caught, and since then, Sally has stopped at hotels for the night and avoided all rest stops. Back in 2005, when I was 18, I had just dropped out of high school in Minnesota. I was about halfway through the school year, and I just didn't have the credits I needed to graduate. I had some mental health problems in my junior year, and was altogether frustrated with my life at this point in time. I was more concerned with drinking than I was with school. So I dropped out and bought a plane ticket, and went to live for a while with my cousin and his girlfriend in Washington State. They lived in a town about an hour north of Seattle. I also had some friends that were a year older than me living down there. I would occasionally drive down to the city to spend a few days with them, go to concerts and things like that. After a particular stint in Seattle, I decided to head back north to my cousin's place. With me being the financially impaired individual that I was at the time, I left Seattle without a dollar to my name. As I'm getting on the road, I notice I'm very low on gas. I figured that I could make it though. But of course, about 20 miles short of my exit, the car that I'm driving begins to putter and gasp for more fuel. Lucky for me, I'm coming up to a rest area. So I pull in and go to the payphone to begin to call the very few contacts that I know in this state. I had no money, so I had to call collect. I get a hold of my cousin, and he happens to be about 3 hours away in his hometown, and drunk no less. No luck there, so I call his girlfriend, and she never answers. Everyone I know in Seattle doesn't own a car, so at this point I'm kind of hosed. My cousin said he was coming home in the morning, and could pick me up on his way through. So it looks like I'm spending the night at this rest stop. So I get settled with my seat reclined and using a hoodie as a blanket. I'm there for about 20 minutes when a van pulls into the rest area. It was one of those Chevy Astro vans. The van parks and out comes your typical creeper. About 5'5", pudgy, balding and with thick glasses. The creeper begins walking around the parking area, glancing into all of the parked cars. There were only about 3 other cars at the time. He walks slowly right in front of my car, and just stares me down for what seems like an hour. At this point, I'm pretty sure my future involves me being referenced in a documentary about serial killers. So Creeper Guy gets back in his van and parks it so that he's behind me on the other side of the parking lot. I parked facing the bathroom area, and he's parked behind me facing the woods. At this point, I'm no longer reclined and relaxed. I'm now sitting quite awake, and I'm not able to take my eyes off of this shithead. I can look in my side view mirror and see him through his, just staring at my car. This goes on for about 2 hours, and he would occasionally get out of his van and go stand in the woods in the darkness. I could tell that he was still watching me, because I could see the cherry on his cigarette light up as he would inhale. At this point, I'm pretty on edge, and have to piss like crazy. There's no way in hell I'm gonna walk into that bathroom with this guy around. So I decide to call the state patrol and have them kick this guy out of here. I ring them up and tell them the situation, and they say they'll send a trooper through. I hang up the phone and I'm kind of pacing around, all while keeping an eye on this creepo. After about 30 seconds, the payphone rings. I'm thinking it's the state patrol calling back for some reason, so I answer. Hello? You want your dick sucked? Let me suck your dick. What the fuck? No. I slam the receiver down. The damned creeper has the payphone number and is calling me from within the woods. I'm slightly terrified at this point, and I'm kind of frozen but ready to run 1,000,000 miles an hour if necessary. I've got my eye on the woods, and the phone rings again. I can't decide whether to answer it or not. I don't want to miss the state patrol if they are calling for some reason. So I answer the phone silently. Come on, let me suck your dick. I don't want to have to hurt you. I could even give you some money. At this point, this piece of shit has threatened me, so I immediately go into rage mode. I start quickly for my car, when I remember that there's an axe handle in the back end for situations like this. As I'm walking towards the car, the creeper starts out of the woods and is walking towards me. I get to my car, grab the axe handle, and start towards this guy, pointing at him. Motherfucker, you better get back in your van and get the fuck out of here, or I'm gonna bash your skull in. He stops in his tracks, stares at me, kind of assessing me. He turns around and gets in his van, and slowly drives away while staring at me. At this point, I'm completely shaking due to the adrenaline when the trooper finally arrives. I tell him the whole story and he takes my information and says he could drive me up the highway to the nearest Denny's so I could stay the rest of the night safe there. He asks if we can first stop by the other side of the highway to see if the guy has just switched rest areas. I agree. We pull into the rest area, and lo and behold, there's the van. The trooper approaches and is talking to the guy for about 5 minutes. I can tell the trooper is giving him the third degree, sticking his finger in his face and raising his voice. The trooper returns and tells me the situation. Apparently there was nothing he could do to charge the guy at this point in time. Seemed odd to me since the guy had threatened me and was soliciting sex at a rest stop. The guy didn't have a license himself. He claimed that a friend had dropped him off and he was waiting for him to return. And the trooper told him that if he was still there when he passed through, he would be arrested for trespassing, and if he or any other trooper saw him driving, he would be arrested for not having a license. And the trooper also told me he had several pairs of binoculars and a large bag of candy in his front seat. So I get dropped at Denny's, and my cousin eventually picks me up and I tell him the story. We have a good laugh, being able to look back on it. And we go back the next day with a can of gas to get my car. End of the story, right? No. We arrive at my car and there's a note under my wiper from the damn creeper. It was written in the form of a poem. I can't remember it exactly, but it went something like this. You should have shut your mouth, you stupid little bitch. Somebody should have taught you to never go and snitch. You should go and get back on mama's tit. I went on for several pages, but I can't remember anymore. The guy had cut all the brake lines and everything he could underneath the car. We called the troopers again. They came and took the note, and took some more information. It wasn't even my car. A friend of mine had been visiting, and wanted to buy a car and road trip back. He decided against it and left the car, and said that I could use it and he would make plans to get it later. I didn't stay in Washington much longer after that. I spoke to an investigator one more time, but nothing ever came of it, and I don't know why. They knew who the guy was and everything. At this point, I was just over it and wanted to move on. For the short time I was in Washington after this, me and my cousin would pull into every rest stop we passed, hoping to find this guy. In retrospect, I guess it's a good thing we never saw him again, because we were dead set on seriously hurting him. What is up, guys? It is Blue Spooky here, as always. I just wanted to thank you guys so much for watching, especially if you made it this far to the end here. I wanted to thank you guys so much for all the support you've been giving me. All of the positive comments and the feedback has been really great. I think that the last video I did with the sleepover stories was one of my most positively received videos that I've ever made. So that's pretty awesome, especially with everything that's been going on lately. We're almost at 70,000, so what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to make another special milestone video for 75,000 subscribers. Let me know what you guys might like to see for a little special video for 75,000 subscribers, because I have a few ideas, but I'm not really settled in on a particular one yet. Another thing I'd like to mention is that I'm sorry if my voice sounds a bit different in today's episode. The reason I haven't posted for the last few days, even though I've gotten better internet, is because I got spontaneously sick. And basically, if you didn't know, when I'm sick, it usually affects my nose quite heavily, and it makes my voice sound really nasally, like I'm trying to do a Steve Urkel impression. So, if my voice sounds a little bit different in today's episode, it's probably because I'm a little bit sick. So I apologize for that. If you guys liked the video, please feel free to leave a comment below and perhaps some feedback, or like, share, or subscribe if you feel so inclined. If you have a personal story you'd like to send in, or you'd just like to chat sometime, go ahead and take a look in the description below. There will be links to all of my social media accounts, including my Facebook, Gmail, and Twitter. You can go ahead and send me a message on any of those, and I'll try to include your story in a video as soon as possible. If you do decide to send in a story, please be sure to include in the tagline what the name of the story is, the theme, if it has one, and how you'd like to be credited in the description of the video the story appears in. If you guys are curious about the music used in any of my episodes, the music is always listed in the description below. I always list it in the order which it appears, by name, and I have links to the artists as well if you'd like to check out more of their work. So if you guys are curious about the music, please go ahead and check in the description. Last but not least, as always, if you guys have any constructive criticism, please feel free to leave it in the comments below, as I'm always looking for new ways to improve the channel. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys have an amazing day.